We are at this India AI Impact Summit, and in attendance are world leaders, CTOs, CEOs, CIOs, and I'm sure you're interacting with a lot of them. What would be your recommendation and guidance in terms of mind shifts regarding AI?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And my point of view, and it's not only in India, it's globally to CEOs, CIOs, CAIOs that I meet with, is the anchor to the mind shift question. And what I'm a firm believer in, based on our own experiences of implementing AI for ourselves and
Right.
taking the customer zero mindset, but then also working with all of the other customers in partnership with players like Cognizant, is that the AI adoption is very spotty and there's not enough of a conviction in some pockets in terms of the benefits of AI. So my point to them consistently has been the following: one, make sure that you anchor your AI strategy to your business strategy. Number two, prioritize the use cases. Number three, make sure that you get your data in shape, because without getting the data in shape, you cannot execute it. And then fourth, even after all of that, you have to anchor the mind shift and think of it as a change management problem. And number two, think of it as a conviction at the top problem. And if you do not think of it that way, then you will falter in this journey, and frankly, you'll be left behind.
We have a plethora of opportunities when it comes to AI and in its entire stack. So, if organizations have to really prioritize what they need to focus on and spend their monies and make their investments on in the next 18 to 24 months, what would be your recommendation?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think the organizations need to recognize a few things. The first thing is that the AI compute stack is very different from a traditional stack that we've had in the industry for decades now. And it really requires you to think about very differentially about what are you using the stack for. So there are clearly customers who are using predominantly training workloads. And for them, the stack requires a very detailed fine tuning across the compute, networking, and storage layers, because without that, they're not able to extract the value from billions of dollars they're putting in place. So that's on that side. For most of the enterprises, the adoption is anchored to the inferencing workloads, and that's where they're going to get the value from. And over there, it is the same issue, but also with a twist. Meaning, when you look at these AI workloads, one of our core beliefs is that it's better to bring AI to data than data to AI. And in a world where Gartner estimates that 25% of the data that is managed and generated today is at the edge, which is not an on-prem or in the cloud, and it's rapidly going to go up to 50% of the enterprise managed data will be at the edge. So when you take that, you have to bring data or AI to data rather than data to AI, and it's an inferencing workload. Then companies also need to think about what is the best place to orchestrate this workload.
Right.
So, for example, you're in manufacturing, the best place to orchestrate this workload is at the edge at the manufacturing site. If you're in a company, then many a times you can rapidly decide that the best place to execute this workload is at the PC, because the PC is the most energy and the cost efficient node in the whole system when you think about all the way from the cloud to the edge perspective. So those are the two different issues that companies need to grapple with based on the workload. And again, goes back to the mindset question. You have to understand what the mindset and is where the value is going to come from.
First and foremost, thank you, Vivek, for being with us today. See, the vector 1, 2, 3 is more like a framework rather than a strategy by itself. I think that brings a lot of a clarity to how we apply all this, AI initiatives within the company enterprise. So it gives you a clarity. Okay, otherwise everything looks like being AI washed today, right? So it brings a sense of clarity. Okay, there are certain things that you do in your internal technology lifecycle processes where the primary focus is to bring in the hyper productivity, leveraging the AI part. So and in the early days, AI infusion was all about actually bringing that additional productivity out of what you do within the system. So what I've seen so far is that both the service providers as well as the enterprises, they were all bringing in doing stuff to actually just to squeeze more out of the same dollar. Using AI, it is a more of a extension of what you used to do as a process automation, robotic automation and so on. So that's the stage one. But the real value of AI is actually seen where you apply to bring in additional innovation that will bring growth.
Right.
Growth with a lot more experience, and so that's a more of a growth driver. Now, from a Cognizant like service provider standpoint, that means that actually you opening up the new value pools, which
Right.
typically your IT services companies were not focusing on, which meaning we do applications development, infrastructure management, run operations. Now, with the advent of AI coming in, if I'm able to actually completely agentify a business process, now I can actually expand my opportunity landscape from doing IT to actually executing the business process.
Right.
So that is what we mean by that vector 3 opportunities. Now, coming to where I see customers are, they are just starting to move from the vector 1 productivity led AI to more and more of a innovation and the growth opportunities and expansion into the business process arena. So this is where the opportunity lies now, right? So now the question is, are we really having all the foundational infrastructure, foundational data curation and pipeline? And where you talked about data coming to AI and AI coming to data. In early days of experimentation, the companies were not really having a long-term strategy or a plan. They all wanted to jump into doing stuff first, experimenting, learning, failing, and succeeding, and so on. Now that they have seen some early successes, now the question is actually, what is our long-term business strategy? How is this AI strategy going to be aligned with the business strategy? What is the eventual business outcome that you are really expecting? So that you apply this to the entire stack, the 5-layer cake that we all been talking about, from chips to compute to infrastructure to the models to the agents. So how do you actually think about this whole stack in alignment with that end state business strategy? Because in the early days, we just wanted to actually just pick up a model and then start applying something and then inferencing and then gaining some output. We were not looking at the whole stack. Now, this is what the right time is to actually look at the whole stack and look at what we want to get out and how do we actually think about the whole stack. I think now the large enterprises have started going in that way. And companies like Dell and Cognizant already starting to actually preach the whole stack, what we call the full stack AI, and that is becoming the norm. In the more and more conversations are centered around that. I think this is where the future is going to be.
And I think if I could add to that, Anna, that's a really good point. And as you were describing it, one of the other things I'm beginning to see, the initial implementations were you're right, around process and thinking through how do you apply to the existing processes. Correct. But with the agentic technologies that are coming through in full force, one of the other things we are beginning to realize is that companies need to now think about reimagining the work flows. And in many cases, if they have the data piece of it well done, and if they understand which particular use cases they're going to focus on, whether they are productivity centric or growth centric, then some of these agentic architectures and agentic approaches could help you with the reimagination of the workflow. So you don't even have to prospectively define what the workflow is, because all these agents can describe what the workflows ought to look like. And that requires a very different way of thinking about it. And this is where I think partnerships for the likes of Dell and Cognizant can really come into play.
Absolutely.
To help companies think through and help with that reimagination process and realize the full benefits, whether they're productivity centric, growth centric, or innovation centric. So I think that's really where the power
Absolutely. I think now I am starting to actually, even with our own teams, we talk less and less about the pure play, the AI infrastructure or even the models. It's about the agentic, what business processes that you can apply the agentic. It is not about replacing what a human persona would do. It's about what they couldn't do earlier. That's the innovative mindset that you need to bring it up and say what can be reimagined now with the advent of agentic processes running 24/7. So that's where the real focus is all about.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
That's great.
The Dell and Cognizant partnership has been going strong for multiple decades and very successful. In this world of AI, now the bar has risen. And how do we align better to make AI real for our customers?
Yeah, look, I think if I go back and think about how we apply AI for ourselves, we think about AI in four different buckets, in, on, for, and with. So in is how do we put AI in our products so they just work much better.
Right.
On is how do we create a portfolio of products our customers can run their AI workloads on our products much better. And third, AI for is how do we apply AI for ourselves. And the most important part which pertains to this question is AI with, which is how do we partner with the right players to bring these capabilities to our customers so they can actually realize the full value from that. My perspective is, I think because of the five layers that you described of the architecture, and the fact that you kind of need to think through all five of those and then couple it with the business process side of it too, to really realize the full value. No individual player has all of these capabilities, and it necessarily means that partners like us, or we need to partner with players like Cognizant and bring to bear all of the capabilities which straddle all the entire five elements you described, plus the process side of it as well. So this will necessarily mean, I think, the closer coupling of the partnership, because it requires understanding what the business problem is that a customer is grappling with. Then it requires thinking through how do you actually think about the data side of it and make sure that it's in place. And then thinking through, okay, how do you think of either a brand new flow, which is agentic by design, or think about an existing flow and find a way to agentify it. And in order to do all of those, you just need to work much more closely to bring this value to the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Dell Cognizant relationship goes, decades back. But I see the relevance of the partnership is a lot more today than ever in the past, right? So that is primarily because old days, most customers knew exactly what to do from the entire life cycle standpoint, and they all wanted to have a hand in every stage of that life cycle, and then working with partners like us. But today, it is about new ways of actually doing stuff. So I would rather want, as a customer, if I look at the client zero, our own customer, I want my business leaders and the CTO, CAO to be more focused on that reimagining part of it. Right. And then how do I take full advantage of that agentic process and so on, and let partners like Dell and Cognizant to actually look at, okay, worry about the entire stack. Don't look at them as separate silos, but then how do we, the partnership will help actually, take away some of those foundational elements, the data pipeline, the process changes, the infrastructure, the right scalable infrastructure,
right,
the security, governance, all these nuances, the business doesn't need to actually worry about it. If we as partners can actually co-create, co-solution upfront and take care of these nuances, and then offer that overall framework to the customer, and the customer actually worries about the top layer, which is about the reimagining the business process, I think that is where the value gets created. Today, I don't want them to actually sit and worry about is this is the right AI infrastructure, AI factory, should it be on hyperscaler cloud, should it be on some other GPU factory, should it be in my on-prem. That's not something I would like customers to worry about. It's something that we would, as an ecosystem partner, we would actually co-solution and then take it to the customer, and they should be worrying more about, okay, what the relevance from a data, their own business and growth and the business process changes and so on. I think we are becoming more and more tightly engaged in co-creating, co-solutioning for customers and with customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the two words you use, which I love, are to do it in a way which is scalable. And it have the right security built into it. I think scalability is what a lot of these companies are dealing with, and that's where closer partnership will be necessary to deliver.
Absolutely.